Okay, so today is the 25th of January 2023, and we'll talk about two architects, Jean Tschumi and Bernard Tschumi, father and son, both related to this day, the 25th of January. I'll begin with the father, with Jean Tschumi. Okay. So this was the man, the father of Bernard Tschumi, a very important Swiss architect. And unfortunately, he died young. And I hope not because of, well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter that he was smoking. Not too many architects smoke these days. But at that time, it was different. So Jean-André Tschumi, born February the 14th, but died on January 25th. And he died on the day when his son Bernard became 18 years old. So he was born in Switzerland, died on January 25th, was a Swiss architect and professor at the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, famous school. A member of the modern movement, Jean Tschumi is known for his buildings for Sandoz laboratory and factory, Nestlé pavilions at various international fairs, headquarters, La Mutuelle Vaudoise headquarters, as well as for some of his projects, underground Paris souterrain, observation tower, etc. Here he is, I imagine, with Bernard, with his son, who became a famous architect himself. So here he is, an intense man, an interesting man, and I see with his cigarette all the time. I don't know why I thought of Humphrey Bogart. Romantic masculine personalities, black and white. What is this, black and white? A drawing by, for a project by Jean Tschumi. Then one of his buildings, but we already see, you know, a remarkable architecture. I don't know exactly what it is, but hopefully I will go into more detail. This is not a very large presentation. I only have about 80 pictures. Is really not enough, but it's an introduction and an homage, a heartfelt homage to an architect we should all know more about. But if I look at this picture, I like the fact that you know, you have like two systems. On one hand, the rotated Cartesian system, and on the other hand, the curvature of the roofing. I like what I see. I like to express myself very simplistically. It's a pavilion, obviously, for Switzerland. Remarkably modern, actually, almost refreshingly modern. When I look at these pictures and I look at the building, you know, in the background, and I see the newness of the building in the foreground, I realize again and again that architecture is beautiful as an adventure. If it is an adventure, if it breaks new ground, if it opens up new territories, so to speak. I mean, here you see a modern effort, no? And this effort was representing the time when it was built. I see here 1958. It's some kind of a rejuvenation after the horrors of the Second World War, when you know, in the name of rebirth, people began to build in, you know, in more courageous ways. And we need courage, not just in architecture, but in life itself. I don't know what this building is, but we contemplate even at this level of visuality. We contemplate his works. Jean Tschumi. You see, from the building is could have been built today, but the cars certainly belong to that time, and I actually like the cars as well, with their so-called obsolete aesthetics. But in the field of aesthetics, beauty is not conditioned by time, actually. But the building, if this building was built these days, would have been just fine. Not to speak about this, which is, astounding today as it was then. Jean Tschumi. And I always said, I always thought, and I always felt that a good building is good at any stage of its construction, or yes, coming into being. Even if it would have remained at this level, it would have still been it would have been nice. I mean, I like the you know the process on one hand, but also the ingenuity of the structure. I mean, really, did we progress so much? I mean, this kind of architecture, which was built, more than 60 years ago, is still, I consider it fresh. Now, I understand why I wrote the black and white, because the pictures are in black and white. I discovered this website which published his works in black and white photographs. And I actually like these black and white photographs. As I like also this stair, which of course this kind of helicoidal stair is not unseen or uncommon, but the treatment, even the parapet is done very, very elegantly. So he was just like his son, an architect, a practicing architect, and also an educator, a professor of architecture. Jean Tschumi. Too bad he died too young. The craft of architecture is very well, served, as we can see here. Everything is designed and built rigorously. Not bad at all. the structure is quite elegant. Those columns made me think a little bit of Pierluigi Nervi. We saw this one. I have to develop this presentation because they are not identified the works. It's not so easy to, well, maybe it is, but no, I think I couldn't find, I actually think I took this. No, I remember because I prepared this material for last year. I think I took these images from, there is, I think, a website dedicated to him, to Jean Tschumi. Hand drawings, but nicely done. This is a piece which is not employed very often any longer in bathrooms, but I think it's very useful. I think it should be brought back if we continue to build civilized bathrooms. Rendering another one, 1969, but it's not. This is not a rendering. It's a sketch, perhaps of an existing building. But I like the drawing. It's poetical somehow, lyrical. Exposition Nationale des Beaux-Arts. This is was a stamp. I think he designed it, or I don't know. I mean, 1930. Bernard was born in 1944, so yeah, it's possible that he designed this stamp. He only did the building, not the statues. So this happened more than 60 years ago or so. He died in 1962, I think. Was yeah, 1962. Interesting work here. I wonder, I wonder what is happening here. What is this? But it's the part of the building that intrigues and attracts at the same time. Yeah, too bad the buildings are not identified, but I will change the presentation in this respect in the next one for Bernard, for his son. sketches, sketches by Jean Tschumi. And here he is with the patrons. The architect is on the left, and I don't know who the other two gentlemen are on the right. I think the clients. Directeur de l'usine d'Orléans and chef du département d'achat au laboratoire Sandes. So, yeah, the clients with the architect, more modest somehow, a little bit behind and on the left. Drawing for a desk. Chairs, seatings, a lamp, a desk, lamp. He designed the lamp, but maybe the desk too. (1963). Okay, so we'll go now to his son, Bernard Tschumi, who is 79 years old today. And I have a much more ample presentation about him. Bernard Tschumi, born in 1944. Happy birthday, Bernard Tschumi. As I said, he's 79 years old today. Let's read a little bit about him. So he was born on the 25th of January 1944 in Lausanne, Switzerland. He's an architect, writer, and educator commonly associated with deconstructivism. Son of this, we could talk about a little bit later, son of the well-known Swiss architect Jean Tschumi and the French mother. Tschumi is a dual French-Swiss national who works and lives in New York City and Paris. He studied in Paris and at the ETH in Zurich, where he received his degree in architecture in 1969. Tschumi has taught in the United Kingdom and the United States at Portsmouth University in Portsmouth, at the Architectural Association in London, the Institute for Architecture and Urban Studies in New York, the school founded by Peter Eisenman, Princeton University, the Cooper Union in New York, and Columbia University, where he was Dean of the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation from 1988 to 2003. So for 15 years, Tschumi is a permanent US resident. Tschumi's first notable project was the Parc de la Villette, a competition project he won in 1983. Other projects include the new Acropolis Museum in Athens, Rouen Concert Hall, and a bridge in La Roche-sur-Yon. Over his almost 40-year career, he's built accomplishments number over 60, including theoretical projects. Tschumi studied at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland, where he received an architecture degree in 1969. After school and prior to winning the Parc de la Villette competition, He built his reputation as a theorist through his writings and drawings. From 1988 to 2003, he was the dean of Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture. We already read this. He's held teaching positions at Princeton, Cooper Union, the Architectural Association in London. In 1966, he received the French Grand Prix National d'Architecture. He established his practice in 1983 in Paris with the Parc de la Villette commission. In 1988, he opened Bernard Tschumi Architects, BTA, headquartered in New York City. In 2002, Bernard Tschumi Urbanist Architect, BTA, was established in Paris. And this is Bernard Tschumi with his trademark red scarf, which is probably showing his left leanings politically. This is a book he published, Architecture Concepts. Red is not a color. Sorry about the resolution of the picture, but you see him there, lecturing in a not very clear picture. Sorry about this. Now, he published when he was very young what he called advertisings for architecture, and very provocative and whimsical and acid. Like, for example, we see here a lady throwing a man through the window, and he wrote, "To really appreciate architecture, you may even need to commit a murder. Architecture is defined by the actions it witnesses as much as by the enclosure of its walls. Murder in the street differs from murder in the cathedral in the same way as love in the street differs from the street of love, radically." The most architectural thing about this building, and of course you recognize Villa Savoie, is the state of decay in which it is. I like this statement. Very provocative and forward-looking, and I think Le Corbusier deserved it. Architecture only survives where it negates the form that society expects of it. Let's read this again. I wish there were more students here and architects to reflect on this statement. Architecture only survives where it negates the form that society expects of it. Again, architecture only survives where it negates the form that society expects of it. I love it. Where it negates itself by transgressing the limits that history has set for it. We already read this, so it's with a fragment of the famous building whose fame was due Morog in his conception when it was in a state of decay, because it was after the war, maybe during the war too, I don't know, but after the war, the Villa Savoie was almost on the verge of disappearing. It was saved by André Malraux, perhaps, who was the Minister of Culture or some institutions. Anyway, it was saved. And now it's whiter than white, gloriously and rather intimidatingly white. The most architectural thing about this building is the state of decay in which it is. I wonder what Le Corbusier would have thought of it. Maybe he would have loved it. I hope so, but who knows? Common ground architecture is not only what it looks like, but also what it does. And yes, it is a difference. Well, actually, the Guggenheim Museum by Frank Lloyd Wright is in a way the upside down version of a planetarium he once designed. What do we read here? To really appreciate architecture, one must move to a God-forsaken wasteland to dwell in a pile of garbage. Let's read this again. To really appreciate architecture, one must move to a God-forsaken wasteland to dwell in a pile of garbage. Our architecture is defined by its ability to comfort, console, and desensitize us to real experience, supporting the aim of progress as making oneself more comfortable until they die. Complacent life in a building as a slave to our luxury differs from becoming more connected to our worlds in an attempt to work with them in unison towards a greater appreciation of what we have. Like Peter Eisenman, the other deconstructivist out of the 7 or 8, if we consider that Wolf Prix also worked with a partner, he also condemned this obsession with comfort, and with consolation. The truth is there is more to architecture, but we have the courage. We have to have the courage to acknowledge this. And what is here? Advertisements for architecture. He wrote them between 1976 and 1977. The function of the advertisements, reproduced again and again as opposed to the single architectural piece, was to trigger the desire for something beyond the page itself. When removed from their customer endorsement of commodity values, advertisements are the ultimate magazine form, even if used ironically. The logic presumes that since there are advertisements for architectural products, why not advertisements for the production and reproduction of architecture? Look at it this way. The game of architecture is an intricate play with rules that you may break or accept. These rules, like so many knots that cannot be untied, have the erotic significance of bondage. The more numerous and sophisticated the restraints, the greater the pleasure. Ropes and rules. The most excessive passion always involves a set of rules. Why not enjoy them? Well, I am sure this statement would be very enjoyed by the students in our country. Bernard Tschumi, Architecture Concepts. Red is not a color. And here there are, studies or experimental explorations of architecture or of space inspired by film. He was very, very interested in the relationship between film and architecture. He also said that the best architecture is fireworks, and he created very creative fireworks. I hope I have an image here also. Here he is with Cedric Price, probably at the Architectural Association in London. Cedric Price on the left, the architect who proposed radical pedagogies, and on the right, Bernard Tschumi as a young man. And here they are, the deconstructivists. So let's start from the left, Bernard Tschumi. Then, unfortunately, I always forget his family name. The partner of Wolf Prix, who is the third one from the left, but the second one is Helmut. And I will never remember correctly his family name, so I better not attempt to pronounce it. Then the tallest man of the group, behind the shortest man in the group, is Rem Koolhaas. In the front, though, the teenage-like, presence is Daniel Libeskind, and then on the right, of course, Zaha Hadid, and the last one on the right, Mark Wigley, the curator of the exhibition with the deconstructivists. So interesting that in this picture, we have on the left, the Dean at Columbia University Graduate School of Architecture and Urban Planning for 15 years. And on the right, the next Dean after Bernard Tschumi, Mark Wigley, who also was Dean at Columbia University Graduate School of Architecture and Urban Planning for 15 years. So the man on the left and the man on the right together, they directed Graduate School of Architecture and Urban Planning for 30 years. The two men, 15 years each one of them. Interesting. They probably didn't think, because at that time, well, I don't know if Tschumi was already dean at that time. Yeah, it's possible that he was. Yeah, I think he was. But I don't know if Mark Quigley knew that he would be the following dean. Himself a provocateur, because Mark Quigley, the man on the right, at one moment he published a manifesto, calling for turbulence in architecture. How many deans of even less prestigious schools would invite to turbulence? I don't think too many, no. Anyway, deconstructivist architecture. This was the exhibition of the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and we look at artworks by the Russian constructivists with Malevich, the founder of suprematism, and others. Malevich had a big influence on Zaha Hadid. Parc de la Villette. This is sorry, there should have been Parc de la Villette and not Parc la de Villette. But who knows? Maybe in the case of a deconstructivist, if we can still call Bernard Tschumi a deconstructivist, maybe it's okay like this. But it happened unintentionally. He won the competition and he built it, and it was provocative work. In a way, a revolutionary work, because he inspired by the Russian constructivism and employing red not as a color, but then you wonder, what is it about red that is not a color? Why, in what way redness, in what way red is not a color? It is a color, but it's more than a color. And so maybe we should talk about this. But these are, in a way, architectural follies. They are built without a specific function, serving a specific function. And after all, Bernard Tschumi was the one who said form follows fiction. So there are these red, cubes display, equidistant, kind of on a grid, and they create this urban park. There are other elements here too, not just a reddish, in a way, deconstructed cubes. Not far away from here is an enticing building by Jean Nouvel, the opera of, is it opera or Philharmonia? Philharmonic building, beginning to show weaknesses in my way of talking in English. I don't know if I can see in any of the pictures I have the building by Jean Nouvel, but the park was designed by Bernard Tschumi, following a competition he won, and here you see his strategy, his planning. Quite a large enterprise, successful, and established him as a major architect beyond the provocations of his manifestos. By the way, he wrote to me that he appreciated my invitation to the Diagonal Festival, honoring Claude Parent, and I hope we'll receive some contributions. I received one already from a student in Melbourne, in Australia, but that's it for the moment. Anyway, we try. But red is nice. The red, which in European alchemy signifies, symbolizes the sun, of course, fire, passion, love, the south, and the mythical king, while white symbolizes the mythical queen, the moon as opposed to the sun, um, the north, water as opposed to fire. But the redness symbolizes the things that I mentioned relating to the king, fire, the south, meaning the sun, as opposed to the moon and so on. But who is thinking in alchemical terms these days in architecture? I don't think too many people. But maybe we should. Then maybe we'll understand better what he meant, Bernard Tschumi, although maybe he meant something very different when he said red is not a color. Kind of like in the direction of the provocations of Magritte, where he showed a pipe and said, "This is not a pipe." I love the avant-garde because the avant-garde is unsettling us, is making us young again. You know, is giving birth to new possibilities, to new beginnings. And as Louis Kahn said, beginnings are always in harmony with the human nature. Louis Kahn loved beginnings, and that's what the avant-garde does. Now we look at conceptual drawings, but this became reality. They were built. This is one of the structures. There are many. That's how he used to draw. I mean, I saw an exhibition with his drawings, you know, with the white lines and some redness here and there, and the black background, white on black and red. But white and red and black, these are, again, the colors of alchemy. Because in alchemy, the three stages of European alchemy were nigredo, meaning blackening, then albedo, which meant whiteness or whitening, and then rubedo, reddening. So the alchemical process started with darkening, with nigredo, with blackening, with black, and then it went the opposite way into albedo, into whiteness. You cleaned up. And then because you needed to vivify, to bring vivacity, to bring life into your process, I'm talking the process of the alchemist, you brought in redness, reddening. So blackness, whiteness, reddening. These are the three stages in European alchemy. Maybe in other parts, alchemy, if there was such a thing, involves some other colors. But in Europe, that's what I read in a great book by Carl Jung, Psychology and Alchemy. What about a book, Architecture and Alchemy? I'll try to make a presentation on this, although I'm not quite prepared at this point, but I feel tempted. So here it is. Something else, Bernard Tschumi, when he became dean at Columbia University, he created in 1990, around 1990, I think he became dean in 1988 or so, or around that time, 1990, a paperless lab. So this was more than 30 years ago. He had a vision to create a paperless lab. And we still consume so much paper in this country at this very point. It's very depressing. We cut down the trees in order to produce paper, which ends up in the garbage. And we call this sustainability? No way. Please join us for the 2016 Kurt Schaffer Memorial Lecture, Bernard Tschumi. Where is this? The Phoenix Art Museum. Still Parc La Villette, Parc La Villette, Parc La Villette. Now a pavilion in the Netherlands. An interesting pavilion, and it actually I thought of talking a little bit about it when the Diagonal Festival will happen, if it will happen, and I hope it will. What he did some, of course he was and is a master of provocations and subversion even. After all, he wrote a book, Architectural Disjunctions. Well, we see this pavilion which doesn't have a, it's the walls are slanted, and so is the flooring. So it provokes instability. And this is another subject I should address as soon as I can: architecture and instability. Because the idea that architecture is only about stability and comfort and assurance and security is simply depressingly predictable and kind of a dead end street. So he built this pavilion, which I think still exists, but it received various artistic interventions over the years, because all kinds of installations. Initially, there were TV monitors installed inside the pavilion, and the idea was to see through the glass of the walls the people who were looking at the TVs. So there is a level of subversion here. But he managed to even create a certain level of instability at the student center at Columbia University in New York, which he built. So the installations do not belong to him. He just created the pavilion, but the pavilion, perhaps exactly because of the instabilities that initiated, invited all kinds of artistic interventions, and they happen all the time, as you can see. It's a playground for experiments and all kinds of unconventional imaginings. This is how initially it was. That's how he made it. And yes, this slanted floor is not the most comfortable floor in the world, but that was exactly the point. He didn't want to make it comfortable, to give you the illusion that everything is fine. Now, in conditions of adversity and danger, you become more alive. After all, wasn't Nietzsche who said, live dangerously? And once, if I remember correctly, at Columbia University, during a lecture, he talked with, again, he was the leader of the school. He talked with, or I don't know, he made arrangements for, false announcement, that there is a fire. He expected people in the auditorium to run off from the auditorium, to live in panic even, because he wanted to stir up energies to make people appreciate what they have, in contrast with the danger, even if fabricated. Kind of the same thing here. You could say this is an adolescent in provocation, but when we are not teenagers any longer, I mean, I paraphrase Brâncuș, who said, when we are not children any longer, we are dead. Well, we could also say, when we are not teenagers any longer, we are dead. And unfortunately, I see so many teenagers who are not teenagers any longer, who are just, submissive and timid and or indifferent. And this is very, very sad. If you are not full of life at that age, when? So this is the pavilion. You can see built very well, and it is an architecture that is clearly conceptualized and built and convincingly built. Also, Bernard Tschumi, I remember him saying during a conference I attended that good architecture can be explained to your grandmother on the phone in 1 minute. Well, in a way, it is true. If you have such a piercingly simple idea that could be, explained in a minute, no more than a minute on the phone to your grandmother or whoever. You see, maybe exactly because of its instability, it's diagonal. This pavilion, unsettling as it is, invites continuous, interventions. If it was static, if nothing was slanted, if there was no diagonal, if it was self-sufficient and stable and comfortable, you would have had no desire to contribute with anything new or creative. But like this, you see, it's a there is a turmoil here. It's in a way it's some kind of a yeah, I don't know if it's a turbulence, but it certainly it's an active. It's a place which invites to dynamic approach to it, and I think that's good. Now I talked about student center. That's exactly the Alfred Lerner Hall at Columbia University in New York, which he designed it and built it, and it is a a student center with a rather unusual characteristic, that towards the large yard in front of it, it becomes again slanted and diagonal and provocative, because it forces you to assume a certain level of discomfort. In fact, this floor here on the left is not horizontal; it's slanted. So the tables, in fact, you can see they have, if the table has 4 legs, as it usually has, the legs, here are shorter than the other ones in order to compensate for the slanted floor. This is also slanted, and it's a commentary in a way on the adventure of education, on the adventure of being young, on the adventure of life, and yeah. And this is how it looked like at night. It's like a large screen, a large monitor on which the silhouettes of the students walking up and down on those ramps, they become the actors in a cine verite kind of movie. Now, he used glass also in the Acropolis Museum, and we are going to see it. I visited it. Well, we see here the works of someone who was, I'm sure, I mean, how old was he in 1968? He was born in 1944, so 24 years old in 1968. That year and at the end of the 60s, when the youth of the world wanted a new world, wanted a change in the world, wanted to fight against banks, against money, against the war. They wanted to make love, not war. And so there was this agitation in those years that provoked also, the new music. And there is something of the ferment of those years in the work of this architect. I mean, even the red scarf symbolized and symbolizes that rejuvenation through revolution, which today is almost gone, unfortunately. Le Frenois, this is a building I visited, and I have to tell you, I was lucky because when I visited it, the building was closed. But I told her that I came from the United States and I want to see it badly, and they allow me to walk up the ramps and go to the roofing, and that's where the spectacle is, and that's where the interesting things happen. This is a school for media arts. And I don't know if he won the competition for it, or he just received a commission. The clients were not very happy because they said that the pigeons would send their droppings through the broken roofing, but I left it between two roofs there, in that interstitial space between two roofs, because there were existing buildings like these ones here. And then he built this umbrella above them, and you could have walked up and down on these stairs, and on the these exterior corridors. And I found this experience here very Piranesian. I felt like as if I was in some kind of an engraving by Piranesi. So again, these were existing buildings, and then he came around them and above them with what you see here. And I like this disjunction. After all, he wrote the book Architectural Disjunctions. Well, it is an architectural disjunction. And I had been here, and at that time I didn't know of amateur architecture in China, who they build sometimes this kind of passageways on the roof. In fact, a sample of this experimental working on the roof was brought to the Venice Biennial. Anyway, I do think architecture is beautiful when it is experimental, when you try new things, even foolish things. It's nothing wrong to be foolish. Even Erasmus of Rotterdam wrote in Praise of Folly. The morose, so-called serious ones are boring like hell. We should stay away from them, really, because they take away all joy from not just from architecture, but from life itself. You see the idea, the existing buildings here, and then the umbrella, so to speak, which is brought down on the old buildings, and this is the building. Now it's true, it depends. Like here, you might be even tempted to think it's a stadium. It's not a stadium. It's a school of visual art, of media arts. Le Frenois. I like also the chromatics, the complementary colors, yellow and blue. This is a book I have. architecture in between, and a lot of good architecture is indeed in between, because I was mentioned those interstitial spaces here. Literally, they are indeed interstitial. Studio National des Arts Contemporains, Studio National des Arts Contemporains, Tourcoing, France. Bernard Tschumi, Architects, New York. And this is from a book, I don't know which book. Well, maybe this very book that I showed, which I have, but I don't remember seeing. Maybe it's there. I didn't look through it in a long time. It's in an attic in Sibiu. But this kind of visualization, I don't know how to call it, expresses the, you know, the what he tried to generate with this school. I don't know where this is in one of these staircases here, but it's very dynamic and it's very. It has a nice spirit. I really liked it, being there, and I regretted that the owners of the building or the people working there had some functional troubles. But for someone who thinks that form follows fiction, I guess certain things having to do with you know, easiness or comfort are not the highest importance. As I said, I worked on these you know, things, and it's, you feel both inside and outside, and you feel belonging to two worlds, and you feel kind of inclined to experiment with your own life, to break the rules. And if we don't break the rules, what do we get? Boredom, that's what we get. So I keep telling the students, be provocative, create new things, even crazy things, do them. Blue Residential Tower, New York. A nice medium-sized tower. It's not very tall, but it stands out. It really does. And I came to appreciate it more and more. Why exactly he chose to make it blue, I think he wrote about it, but I don't remember. But it's not just the blueness that counts here. It's also the slanted structure, and you know, the pixelated facade, but pixelated in a different way than you know, some other so-called pixelated architectures are today considered. So I like this building. You see here the Empire State Building, and anyway, other construction, but this is Bernard Tschumi, and it's not bad. It's residential, as you can see, you know, apartments with nice views of Manhattan. I used to go to an auction house not far away from this building, Tepper Gallery, because I love engravings, and there I enjoy looking at some of them, not very expensive. And once I will tell you a story about one engraving that I bought from there, actually with the L'Abside de Notre Dame in Paris. It's a delicious story, painful to me, but it's probably not now the time to tell the story. So, blue residential tower. It seems as a pixelated facade, which adds up to drama, reflects a mosaic, probably a student wrote this for some paper, reflects a mosaic of the diverse community around it while simultaneously blending into the sky. a combination of dark and pale blues. The window pattern evokes the shifting rhythms. Materials. Interiors are fitted with bamboo or palm floors, stone counters and tiles, and stainless steel cabinets and appliances, defining simple and elegant spaces. There are sloping windows, which adds up to drama. Well, yeah, a student row. This, the sloped curtain wall is a feature in many of the apartments, and the majority of units have full height windows in the living and dining rooms. The curtain wall system with a pixelated glass design is comprised of gray tinted vision glass, spandrel glass in 4 shades of blue, and periodic panes of full body blue tinted vision glass. Here it is. And it's maybe also in a way a metaphor for an architectural metaphor for Manhattan itself, you know, diversity, multiplicity in unity, the multitude of people, of races, of you young and old and short and tall, they are all there together and you see them in the subway, you know, and then yes, this is the monolith of the building, but it's a monolith which is slanted a little bit, and so there is a level of instability inferred or implied. It's really a good building. I like it more and more. I almost feel like going back to New York if I could afford it, and you know, look at it with fresh eyes, and maybe also go to Tepper Gallery for a short visit. But I don't have the money now for Tepper Gallery, although it's not an expensive gallery. I miss New York. I lived for many years there, and I have to say it's a formidable city. It suffered, yes, the pandemic, but and it suffered at 9/11, but it's a city of still, I think, great potential. And Bernard Tschumi did a great job here. That's what I feel, and this is what I think. You see how the columns are. If we can call them columns, maybe we can. Although they are not like the so-called classical orders. Limoges Concert Hall. Now you will see a very different building, very different, but still based on a so-called strong concept. It's a circular building. Sometimes he does employ, you know, the circle in an almost, you know, classical way, if I can say so. But then the circle was also used by the visionary architects of the 18th century in France, like Poulain and Ledoux. So it's a concert hall. We are going to see another circular building very shortly, also in France. The Gallery of Carnal Hall at Le Rossi. Here it is. And we'll see another one. Interesting name, Carnal Hall. I wonder if it has anything to do with carnality. Now the museum in Athens, he won the competition and he built it. I visited it, I was inside it. And you'll see the relationship with the Acropolis. Some people, I understood, they complained that the building is a little bit too so-called modern, considering the vicinities, the so-called context. But we do have to assert our time. And I don't think we should be afraid of disjunctions. But it's not just a disjunction, it's a conjunction as well. And you'll see the relationship between the building and the Parthenon, which is on top of the hill. This one is at the base of the hill. And I hope I have here a picture with a scene from the air, or also the side plan. Just a second. Yeah, I was hoping to see the relationship with them. Yeah, you see here in this picture the correspondence, the dialogue between the Parthenon and the new museum created by Bernard Tschumi at the base of the hill. So there is a dialogue. You know, it might appear that you know, there is just disjunction. No, there is also conjunction. Anyway, we'll come back to this. I want you to see all the pictures that I have. He won the competition, as I said, and he built it. And here it is. On the right, the museum by Tschumi, and on the left, towards the top, the Parthenon. But we remember what Louis Kahn said, that for him, the Parthenon was less important than Paestum, Hera's temple in Paestum, in the south of Italy. And I had seen both. I had seen the Parthenon, and I had seen Hera's temple in Paestum, and I would say that in my opinion, Louis Kahn was right. That pre-Doric temple built for Hera in Paestum is more impressive. For me, it was more impressive than the Parthenon. Even in Athens, I saw a less known temple, a little smaller than the Parthenon, which impressed me more. But the Parthenon is also, in a way, the victim of its own success. You know, it's in a way too cleaned up and too, you know, almost egocentrically attracting all the attention. But there are more interesting things actually that are not in the picture, so to speak. And of course, through this glass wall, you see the Parthenon, you see the Acropolis, and through the openings in the floor and the glass parts of the floor, you can see archaeological remnants. And the conception is clearly illustrated in this rendering. Now, a bridge he designed. I don't know where it is. I think in France or maybe Belgium. I'm not sure. Sorry about this. This was the project. Now, an interesting work in Paris, the zoological park. So, you know, where the animals can be, you know, contemplated, if I can use this word. I'm a little bit against zoos in general, but what can we do? We still live in not in the post-Anthropocene, but in the Anthropocene era, when man is the measure of all things, and the animals, you know, they do what they can. I'm sure they are taken care of, but I don't think that's what God had in mind when he created the animals, to entertain the humans. But what can we do? I mean, we could do certain things, of course. Here he collaborated with a landscape architect, I forgot her name, and they did a good job. I like the view from the air. I hope I have a, I'm not so sure about those stones, you know, fake stones, but maybe the giraffe is, they enjoy them. The landscape is done very well, and it's unexpected in a way if you compare this work with the Parc La Villette. It's more organic and more. I mean, there is no greed any longer. Maybe appropriately, considering it is a zoo. And I like even the fact that he uses wood in this way. And he didn't employ wood too much, as far as I know. In general, the deconstructivists, if we are to call them so, avoided natural materials. But in this case, you know, was probably almost unavoidable, considering that it was built for animals. And I think they did a good job with this wooden part. The stones appear a little bit to be like in a science fiction movie or a movie by Steven Spielberg, but I guess it would have been difficult to find real rocks of those dimensions. I like very much the, you know, the employed wood as it is here, and behind the, you know, the civilized modern construction, but the wood is vigorous and you know, irregular as things in nature are. There is a picture, I don't know if I have it here, of the architect looking very affectionately towards a giraffe. So we are in Paris, the zoo in Paris, and unfortunately, I can't see very well this side plan. But we have these pictures. It would be interesting in a way to compare Parc La Villette with this work done later in his life. It's one of the more recent works, this zoo in Paris. And as I said, he worked with a lady, I think, a landscape designer, and I think she did a good work here. I don't know why I don't have her name here. I should. But it still saddens me the trapping of animals, you know, for human enjoyment. Yeah, here is the view from the air, and I think it's very nice. Maybe it would be even nicer when the animals decide to make an effort and break the fences and run off, or in a moment of unexpected generosity, the humans to take them away from the zoo and bring them back to the, you know, to where they belong, actually, because I don't think they belong in a zoo. The zoo, in a way, is like a, you know, a concentration camp for animals. Alesia Museo Park. This is another circular work. You know, kind of interesting. It's the third work based on a circle, a clearly defined circle. You know, you have this feeling of some unidentified flying objects that were brought down to Earth. I don't know if Bernard Tschumi thought of Ledoux when he did these projects, but they do make me think a little bit of Claude Nicolas Ledoux. It's a good building. What is its function? It's a museum. In France, I think. It should be in France. But he employed here also several systems, and despite the title of the book, Architectural Disjunctions, I see conjunctions as well. You know, where three systems come together and create a certain level of complexity and even hybridity beyond the fact that there is the unity of a strong order or conception. And in this case, we also have the fourth system, if we are to be unjust and call nature's work a system. I mean, the slender trees around the building, and then behind them in this picture, the slanted wooden elements of the veil of the building, if we are to call it so, that surround the building. So there is order and there is, I don't know if I could use the word disorder, but there is the other side of the story represented by these diagonals that problematize the, in a way, the very centrality and order of the building, which without this second facade or second skin would have looked much more static than it is now. And this second skin actually is a transition towards nature. Now here I don't see those trees that I saw in the previous picture. It's an interesting landscape in a way, not too many buildings around, some remnants of buildings, so to speak, on the right, and otherwise, an open landscape. Now, this one was not built. Anima Cultural Center, located in this place, Grotta Mare in Italy, was not built as yet, as far as I know. The need for nature is shown here rather literally, just like in two buildings that Arata Isozaki did, and also there are insinuations in kind of in the same vein also in Toyo Ito and other architects. You know, it's a way of trying to communicate with a natural environment that unfortunately we depleted in a serious way, in a almost tragic way, and now we pay the price. So the coming back of nature, even in this oblique way, you know, through the artificiality of a facade of a building, which approximates, at least aesthetically, what nature is supposed to be. Otherwise, we see the same very clear conceptualization of the project that can be communicated to a grandmother in a minute on the phone. A nice picture of the model. Now, the Science Museum in China, Binhai Science Museum, is a novelty in his work, in his oeuvre, if I can say so. And it surprised me when I first saw it. It's a science museum quite large, and you will see soon how large it is when compared with the Guggenheim Museum in New York. So this is the plan, but we are talking about China now, a huge country with a huge population and with a huge belief in science as well these days. And this is the building. It really surprised me at first because it's something, almost like an Ur architecture or primordial archaic almost architecture, but done in the name of those of that maybe, but no, I don't know if I should say in this context, if I should use the words of Su Fujimoto, primitive futures, because this is not primitive at all, but it is a kind of an archaic, it is like a citadel, the citadel of science, but done with the exquisite tools of the present. So the adventure of doing architecture is here exemplified as well. A question just came to my mind. What if the father of Bernard Tschumi was not Jean Tschumi, but Louis Kahn? I wonder what Louis Kahn would have thought of this building, because it has something of the fundamentalism of Louis Kahn. And maybe that's why it surprised me when I first saw it. And here it is, you know, a collage of two sections, the section through the museum by Bernard Tschumi and the section through the Guggenheim Museum by Frank Lloyd Wright. It's huge. It stands out in a world with many museums. It's a work that stands out and so very different from the Acropolis Museum, isn't it? I mean, in terms of architectural expression, otherwise the clarity of the conception is similar. China, where the experiments in architecture take place. Who would have thought of it? Now, certainly not Mao Zedong. I wonder what he would have thought, you know, seeing some of the buildings built by China these days. And as you can see, Bernard Tschumi is not turning his back on ornament either. You know, I mean, after all, we see that the skin of the building has ornamental designs that also welcomes, you know, a certain aleatory form of aesthetics. And we need freedom as well. We need the clarity of conception. We need order, but we also need disorder. We also need the impressionism of what is not predictable and planned. And it is important to have both. No, I think this is the last work by him that I show in the Netherlands, in Hague. The playfulness of the windows shows clearly that Johan Huizinga was right. You know, a man born in the Netherlands. I'm talking about a theoretician and critic of culture who wrote the book Homo Ludens, the playing human being. And if you are not playful, you cannot truly be creative. You have to be playful. With the absence of playfulness, of course, combining work with pleasure or with play, it's important to play. And then these windows do show this aspect of human life. It was the conception of Johann Huizinga who that you know play is prior to work, and without play, without the ludic aspect of life, we cannot create culture. And if we don't create culture, architecture is not architecture because, as Alvar Aalto said, architecture belongs to culture, not to civilization. It's a commercial building, yes, but it's done in a a playful way, and I think it works. Now we see ornament here as well. That's it. So let's wish happy birthday to Bernard Tschumi and to thank him for provoking us.